With the Industrial Revolution, you lost the idea that children are valuable assets. And then with population growth freaking out government people, they became an expenditure. And most of modern financial planning talks about the expense of kids. Like, I don't hear any of my industry peers talking otherwise about them. And so that's the whole point of this conversation. I gave you the macro to get to this point.
Welcome to the Up Your Average podcast, where Keith and Doug give no-nonsense advice to level up your life. So buckle up and listen closely to Up Your Average.
Doug, good morning.
What's up, Keith? Have you noticed that there are guys spreading mulch all around the United States right now? And I just love that sign of spring.
Well, where I am, I'm in a Staybridge Inn, and I wake up early, and the building contractors are staying here, and so the roofers are out, and they're staying here. And so I'd say if you're going to do roofing and mulch, they both go about this time of the year. So it's pretty exciting to see that as well. The trees are budding down here too, so that we've got flowers on the trees down here. So it's pretty cool.
And down here is where?
I'm in Music City today, and I am here for about another 2 hours. Then I'm back in Indianapolis, which I look forward to that.
So one of the things Keith does, and some of you know this already, but he's doing some jiu-jitsu, if I even said that correctly. And our son, our young son, he's 12. He's on the middle school wrestling team. And wrestlers are just tough as nails. I mean, they can deal with pain, get up and shake a guy's hand afterwards. And so Keith and I were dialoguing a little bit about this. And Keith, didn't you tell me that the majority are the really good guys in your wrestling class? Your jiu-jitsu class are wrestlers or former
they
wrestlers?
Are. Yeah. They're a certain build. They're not my build. They're a smaller body size, compact. You just see a lot of muscle and energy. And they're also about 20 years younger than me. Most of them, maybe 30. Yeah, there's nobody around when I'm there that's my age, other than Professor Reggie, who's in his early 50s. So I still got a decade on him. So yeah, it's quite an endeavor.
Hey, and why are you doing this? What's going on?
So a year ago, I started having this thought, inability to get up off the floor and frailty. And then I started having a thought of jiu-jitsu, and the story is real long. If you want to hear the whole story, call me. It's pretty hilarious. But the way I process thoughts is I don't let those just fall on the ground without considering them. And things started happening, and I met Professor Reggie down here, and I take lessons down here once every 90 days, and I hate it and I love it. So it's a weird thing, because I know that as you age, it's hard to get off the floor and you can become frail. And this sport starts on the floor, and you can't be frail rolling around the floor with a guy that's my size. That's who I roll with, is somebody that's my size. And at 63, I would have never guessed I'd be rolling around on the ground with a guy that's my size, what we do. And then I go home every day. I go, oh, please don't make me go back tomorrow. And I go do it again.
Well, that's kind of the theme of life, is we have to go back into tomorrow, or we have to go into tomorrow. And so, Keith, what's on your mind today? We were talking about topics and things we want to discuss, and how do you want to tee this up?
Well, I think leadership is part of what I want to talk about, and specifically is there's a psalm in Psalm 127. It talks about children are a gift from God, and it goes on. And it goes on to verse 5 and says, how blessed is the man whose quiver is full of them. And so this is a philosophical, economical, and practical conversation I was wanting to have, Doug. And so a leadership concept has to do with children, I think, like your cultural leadership, your specific family leadership, like how many children should you have and things like this. And so I did a little research. I was looking at our past presidents during my lifetime. President Kennedy, who I think was the first Catholic president, and Catholics had a non-contraception belief up until the 60s, I think, about children. And so he had 4 children. President Johnson had 2. President Nixon had 2. President Ford, 4. President Carter, 4. Reagan had 5. First Bush had 5. President Clinton had 1. George W. had 2. President Obama had 2. And President Trump has 5. And so I think as you can lead me in certain areas of life, right? You can take me, maybe I need a leader to help me understand. But like if I want a leader that says this is important in life, I think that's one thing. And one of the things I discovered with President Trump's secretaries, he has one secretary who has 9 children. And on average, the different secretaries have 4.5 kids, which that's just an interesting thing, because having 5 kids and you have 4, you have to lead differently when you choose to have children, right? Like you can't just sit at gimbal all day long, right?
Right.
Yeah. And so why this is an economic concept is there's a replacement percentage that you have in a country, and you need at least a replacement percentage of or replacement rate of 2%, like 2 children, to maintain your population. Does that make sense?
That's interesting, because didn't China have a 1?
Yeah. So back in 1979, they established a 1-child limit, and that makes sense if you're afraid of like population explosion. I remember I'm talking about population explosion when I was a kid, and probably that had to do with the baby boomers. I was the tail end of the baby boomers, so that they probably the government probably thought that that this was never going to end, right? Like, but just like supply and demand, things take care of themselves, and it did. So in January 1st, 2016, so from 1979 to 2016, they had a 1-child limit. Well, their population, even though it was a big number, when you start doing that, and I think they were getting rid of the girls, like they were shipping the girls over here. And so you can't really reproduce without girls and boys. So they went to 1. And then in January 1st, 2016, they go, oh, we need to raise this to 2. And then in August of 21, they raised it to 3 because they realized we have a problem. And why this is an economic thing, there's a lot of reasons why it's an economic thing. But if you really want to know why the stock market goes up, it's because you have more people buying, building, and supplying things. And so if you don't have more people, your stock market will eventually go down because you won't have the production, the gross domestic product. You won't have a lot of things. And I'm not saying this topic to just talk economics, but I'm saying if you're watching the governments around the world, they screwed up with their population control things, and you can't turn that ship quickly. Yeah.
I love how you have taken a deep dive into the numbers, thinking about economics. That's just the way your brain works.
Well, and I want to finish our time talking specifically. So I wanted to start, macro rather than micro. So I had to jump into it. So
okay. So if we drill it down,
I've got more of the macro. I've got more of the macro. So did you know? And I didn't have time to look this up. There are 2 words, immigration and immigration. Did you know there are 2? Those are 2.
Slow it down.
Yeah, I don't know if I can pronounce them right. Immigration and immigration. They're 2 separate words.
Enlighten me. I have no idea what you're talking about.
One starts with an I, and one starts with an E, and so I didn't take the time to understand. They look like they pronounce the same to me, but immigration with an I means you go to a place. So if you came, say, from Mexico to America, you immigrated with an I. But if you
coming in,
yes. If you came to America from Mexico, you immigrated with an E from Mexico. You left Mexico. It's this two separate words, two different ideas, but you're
going to versus leaving.
Yes, the leaving starts with an E. And so a lot of population challenges around the world might be with the E. They're leaving there because of problems.
Yeah.
And so you can have an increased population with the I where they're coming into your country, but if they're leaving your country, you're going to have problems because most countries around the world are not hitting the replacement rate. So 2.1 is the replacement rate. You can't just do 2 because of infant mortality. So you have to have 2.1 as the replacement rate. So India right now is 2.0. So that's one of the largest countries in the world. 2.0. China is 1. We'll say 1.1. US 1.7. Indonesia 2.1, Pakistan 3.3,
okay,
Nigeria 5, Brazil 1.6, Russia 1.5, and Mexico 1.8. So most of the large countries are not replacing themselves. So they're in the process of population decline.
Nigeria is dominating this game. Did you say 5?
Yeah, I think most people believe Africa is going to be a dominant force in the next century. Yeah.
Unreal.
Yeah. So then if you say who's really, really struggling, South Korea is 0.8, Taiwan 1.1, Singapore 1.1, Italy 1.2, Spain 1.2, Japan 1.2, and China 1.1. So those places they're going to be overwhelmed with senior adults and not have productivity to provide a strong economy in probably 50 years would be my guess. So is
this where we start to narrow down into from macro to micro?
Well, I think let me just throw out
how it affects your family, I guess, is what I was saying.
Yeah. Well, like I wanted to throw in. I'm trying to decide whether to throw out a political opinion or not. I don't really. I used to have a strong opinion on abortion rights and things like that. And I love children, so I won't argue with anybody on it. But I sense that is part of this. That the strong drive for that politically. It probably has a lot to do with population growth and not necessarily the politicians caring one way or the other. It's mostly a population growth. That's my opinion. Don't be offended. I could be dead wrong. I just think about these things and I wonder about it. But in 1960, the U.S., I think we're near the end of the baby boom. In the U.S. Department of Agriculture started a report called Expenditures on Children by Families.
Yeah,
and they talked
about this.
Yeah, so they started in 1960. So if you were following the trend of population in the U.S., you would think, man, this is going to get out of hand. But we're literally 1960. We're almost at the end of the baby boomers, and the government's thinking maybe we need to do something now, and they start putting this report out. And so that last published, hopefully forever, was 2015, and it was $233,610 to raise a child from birth to 16. That doesn't even include the ridiculous costs of college.
Now, Keith, you are a freak when it comes to personal finances. You know that. You're like a black belt jiu-jitsu artist here. Do you have a spreadsheet saying Casey costs me X?
No, but I bet I have friends that do.
I think I have the same friends.
Yeah, I did not go there. And
where do these numbers come from? You know?
Well, and why I wanted to get to this point before I launched to the next thing, Doug. The title of it is Expenditures on Children by Families. And if you think of world history, when you had the Industrial Revolution, prior to that, children were considered valuable assets. If you're wanting to put them in a financial term, because they're going to go out and work the field, right? And so So with the Industrial Revolution, you lost the idea that children are valuable assets. And then with population growth freaking out government people, they became an expenditure. And most of modern financial planning talks about the expense of kids. Like I don't hear any of my industry peers talking otherwise about them. And so that's the whole point of this conversation. I gave you the macro to get to this point because I'm sitting in this breakfast area, drinking my coffee and doing my work every day. And these roofers are coming in with their family. So they're living here and their children are coming in. It's noisy as all get out. And I remember the 20-year-old version of Keith is like, can't you keep those kids quiet till the 40-year-old, the 40-year-old version, I was the guy, right? Like I was the one. So that's the place that I got to with it. So the question I want to answer for our viewers is, how many children should you have? Because I don't know that people ask important questions to one another, to their family members or things like that. But I just wanted to address that question because we have viewers that have watched this that are my age and are raising kids now.
That's right.
And they didn't know they would be doing that when they were my age, but they're raising kids. And you could call that a curse or a blessing. It's all your vantage point. But the question is, how did you and Caroline decide how many kids you're going to have?
That's great. I don't know the answer. We didn't set out and say we're going to have a big family. We actually have 5 living kids. One of our kids never made it. He or she, I don't know. I don't know, but had a miscarriage, and so we've had 5 kids. And think about that one often in our mix. But Keith, I can remember after one discussing, would we like to have another? Yes. And then our joke was, let's keep having them until we go insane. Now, we were fortunate to be able to have them in the first place, but the value was there. We knew the value of life and the excitement that life can bring to ourselves selfishly and to the world. When we sent our son off to Ball State University, I told him they are lucky to have you, and versus the opposite of that, And so I think they bring it to our culture. They build our culture. They bring creativity to their schools and to the marketplace. And so I think for me, it was more or less like an excitement to be able to have these lives, and never really discussed until we thought we were hitting insanity a number.
Yeah, Connie and I, we talked about it briefly and kind of agreed maybe we would have kids when in premarital things. Connie is the 6th of 6, and she wanted to have 6 kids when we were talking conceptually about this. I honestly didn't know that I wanted any, because I knew what kind of knucklehead I'd been through my teens and 20s. And I was thinking, man, that takes a lot of responsibility to be in charge of this human being for a spell. And so I kind of agreed to 1, if that makes sense. I'm like, yeah, we'll have 1.
Seems like a good place to start.
Yeah, like with anything, you should try it once. And like most things, most things I would try once. But yeah. And so in that same time in 1992, I met this man, Bob Warren, who was a former pro basketball player. And he started having this men's retreat. And he was teaching me concepts that were revolutionizing my world. And I couldn't get time. We didn't have cell phone. We didn't have Zoom calls. We didn't have, like, every time I'd talk to him, that's probably 10 or 20 cents a minute. Right, like to go down to Western Kentucky and talk to him. And so I would go every year to the men's retreat that they'd have in April. And there was just a circle of chairs, maybe 20 men around this, and most of them were substantially older than me. And I recall one year driving down there, maybe after Caitlin was born, and thinking,
your firstborn.
Yeah. So thinking, now we've kicked this ball off. When does this game end? Is kind of what I was thinking. And so I went down there and I didn't know these men because it was kind of the first or second time I've been down there. I just knew of them. And I thought, I'm going to find out how these guys answered this question, because this is a bigger question than I ever thought. Yeah, I never considered the question. And for those of you who are watching that you don't have children or weren't able to, there's no judgment in what I'm saying. I'm just saying there's a lot of reasons, a lot of variables.
And this is two dudes talking.
Yeah. And just being honest. This is all this is. And so when I went down there, I set out, most of the men were, at least I was in my early 30s, they were in their late 50s or 60s on average. And so I just asked them, how did you determine? And how many kids do you have? And so over the weekend, I made my way around the circle of people. And my takeaway from the weekend, and on average, they probably had 4, which was, to me at that time, was absurd. Who would have 4 kids? Because
this was the middle of nowhere, Kentucky, so it kind of makes sense.
Well, they're coming from all over, though, right? So, yeah. They were wearing shoes.
Sorry, you Kentucky folks.
Yeah, no, they were wearing shoes. So, yeah. So on average, they had 4, and so Zig Ziglar had a saying, something to the effect that a polygraph test works 100% of the time, and what he is saying is that if you say the truth about something, the polygraph will agree with you. If you lie about something, it will say you're lying. So it's 100% right. Like it's conceptually. And so these people were kind of that way. The ones that had a lot of kids, I would ask them, are you glad you did? And they said, absolutely. We love having this many kids. And the ones that had 1 or 2 or no kids, to the man, said they wish they'd had more. Even maybe some of them that had 4 said they wish they would have had more. And I didn't come across any of the men that weekend that regretted having more than less. And so I was like, wow, this is a whole new paradigm for me. And we had 1 at the time. And I'm speaking to young people right now. What motivated it is I have 2 friends that are expecting their first child this month, and I'm thankful for them and glad for them and cheering them on through this conversation, and their friends, any of their friends that would want to listen to it. I think this is an important conversation.
Well, I love how you started it. Arrows in the quiver. That's a pretty great picture. And recently, we fired one of those arrows off.
That's really cool.
What I've discovered as a dad, and you've already discovered this, Keith, but it would be pretty stupid of me to try and grab that arrow after it's been released. And everybody listening to this is that arrow released right now. And we started somewhere, but we were of value, still of value. And that's the most exciting part, is the life when that arrow's in motion, seeing it go to work.
I was sitting in a church service a couple of weeks ago in Phoenix, and the pastor presented to the crowd. He asked, it was a rhetorical question, I think. I wanted to answer, but I kept my mouth shut.
That would have been awesome if you would have just not.
If my daughter and her husband weren't there, I probably would have answered. But I'm thinking they come here every week.
Yes, you tall guy in the back. What did you say?
Yeah, his rhetorical, I think, question was, has there ever been a more difficult time to be alive during your lifetime? And his answer was no. This right now is and I'm thinking, heck, the 1960s and 70s were horrible. Like there was just nastiness going on, not only economically but socially, and so I mentioned this because this is a philosophical question I think young people have to think about. why, if you agree with this guy and this is the worst time, why would you bring children into this world?
I get asked that from time to time. And it's more like this. I guess it's not an ask. It's a statement. I sure am glad I'm not raising kids right now.
Yeah.
And I love to tell people it's a great time to be raising kids. My wife is a public school teacher, 8th grade. Middle schoolers are weird. And it's a great time to be a middle school student right now.
Yeah.
Maybe the best.
And so I've had that discussion with young couples because I think it's very prevalent in our culture today to not have kids for that reason. And I would say, so the question that I wanted to kind of finish on, and I've thought through it, so I'll throw it out there to you, because we went from the macro to the micro. Why should you and I have kids? But the question is, what is the benefit for having children? Right? Like if the Department of Agriculture is going to tell you the expenditures for them, I'm saying what's the benefit of them? And I
this
will
is
give
where I thought you might be going.
Yeah. So
let's hear it. Let's hear it.
So I put down 4 primary ones. I have to admit that I grokked them or AI'd it to see what they said, but I like my answers much better. The first reason is love. Like, you have been, because you're here, somebody showed you some methodology of love. Whoever gave birth to you, whatever that looked like, it could be a train wreck, but they showed you, like, you could have been left for adoption, right? But that was an act of love that happened. And so because of love, I can express what I believe love is to these humans that have come into my household. And love, I believe, is a choice. It's a free will thing. And so I have no control whether they love me back.
Right.
And so that's the greatest benefit. The second benefit is it's paying it forward. Is the answer to the question, why would you bring kids into this world? The answer is I'm going to leave the world better than I found it. So I'm paying it forward, and that's a great benefit. Economically, I can't think of a better economic benefit. Like, everybody talks about the expenditure. What if you were Michael Jordan's mom? like we cannot give you an investment that's going to have that possibility, right? Like Elon Musk mom. Every once in a while, I see her on Twitter saying something, but like, I don't even know what he does for her. But like, you have no idea. Like you're mining for gold. You have no idea the possibilities of what's there. And that's a part of the economics. But another part of it is you've got somebody to take care of your economic decisions as you age.
There it is. It is.
Yeah, and so that's a benefit. And then the fourth benefit I came up with is entertainment. I can't think of any better entertainment than my children. Like I at every phase in life, they have entertained me at levels that I couldn't ever have paid money for. And so those are my 4 points. I stole the thunder, but I'll let you throw in what you think about that.
No, that's great. I don't have anything else to add to those. Those are wonderful. And I didn't chat GPT anything, but I like your answers. Yeah. Chat will probably steal your answers, Keith. Those were solid. Well,
and as we look at the future are those little eyes that'll be looking up at us. And like, while I was in that cafeteria or that restaurant down there, and I was watching those little children and pondering, a lot of them had more than the 2, so that they were more than the replacement. But I would encourage you, as our viewers and our friends, that maybe you might pass this particular podcast on to young people in your circle to encourage them to go forth and multiply, because the future, the hope of not only our culture but our world, is the young people. And I can't think of a greater way to influence the future than to do it today.
Chasing the Nigerians. Let's go.
Yeah, absolutely. I hope that we up our average on this one, y'all. I'll see you guys in Fishers next week.